Hi there, Horace Henshaw here tonight from the Pacifica Historical Society, and tonight's host of the show, Footprints of Pacifica. We get together every week to discover and explore the lore and the lure of lovely Pacifica, its character and its characters. Tonight's program is focused on the 50th anniversary of the Pacifica Main Post Office located on Manor Drive and Pacific Manor. The history of Pacifica's post office dates back to 1894 when the first station in Pacifica was located, and that was in the Pedro Point area, at that time called Tobin Station. So over the next 120 years, there have been several post offices scattered throughout the community of Pacifica, Sharp Park, Valley Mar, Rockaway Beach, and we're going to be talking about those post offices later tonight. Our guest studio tonight is Andy Gabin. Andy has been a resident of Pacifica for many, many years, and she has even worked for the Sharp Park Post Office back in 1948, and she's going to be telling us some stories behind the scene of what's happening in those years at that post office. So, Andy, thank you for being with us tonight.
You're welcome.
We're going to be interested to talk to you about this. So over the course of tonight's program, we're going to walk you through the history of the Pacifica Post Office. And we're also going to invite you, and we're going to take you behind the scenes as we celebrated recently the 50th anniversary of the main post office. So why don't we, at this time, roll our camera and take you inside and show you a video of the happenings on that day when we celebrated the 50th birthday of the Pacifica Main Post Office.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jim Wigdell. I'm with Postal Service. I'm with Public Affairs, Corporate Communications here for the Pacifica Post Office. And I would really like to welcome you and thank you so much for being here this morning. It's a beautiful day. We're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Pacifica Post Office. I think it's in pretty good shape. We also have Ted Verrey, your brand spanking new postmaster from the Pacifica Post Office.
What differentiates Pacifica from the other post offices that I've been assigned to is that Pacifica is one of the, I believe, 5 offices in the peninsula that have the FSS mail. Usually, a carrier will receive the mail to be sorted. As you see in these cases here, they will work the mail. Now, with the FSS site, such as Pacifica, we have machines that does the sorting. So basically, the carrier does not really touch that mail anymore. It's sorted for them in delivery sequence. What they'll handle is residual mail that came out of the machine as rejects. Very minimal amount. So they will case that mail up, pull it down, be ready to go. At this point, I would like to present 2 25 years service pins to 2 of our city carriers. Mr. Ricky Pelejo and Mr. Guillermo Kwan, could you please step forward? You have contributed significantly to our accomplishments, and I look forward to continued efforts for a better postal service. Signed by our former acting district manager, David Villman.
You also delivered to Shelter Cove?
Yes, yeah, that's very interesting.
Yes, tell me about that.
I met a couple people. I met a lady that she's 94 years old.
Mary Harris.
Yeah, she's been living there for the last, I think they told me, she didn't tell me that, someone told me, I think it's close to 30, 38 years, something like that, but it's a long time. And she has to walk, I think there are 249, 50 stairs every day to get her mail. And she's in great shape. It's amazing. Yeah.
Now, how do they get their mail there?
Well, they have to walk to the gun box that we have. They have to come up and get their mail. And when they have a parcel, I notify them because we cannot go that way down there. They come and get it at Linda Mar Station.
One more.
How has the routes changed and the delivery of the mail changed over the year for your route?
I used to have a route by Manor Plaza, and I've been there for 15 years before they eliminated it, and I miss the people, customer, the route, because I have a push route, and I'm not walking, I just push the cart. It was great. Yeah.
Congratulations on your 25-year pen.
Thank you. I don't think I could go. My wife wants me to work till 62. I told her no, 55 I'm out. I'll do something else.
Thank you very much.
In commemoration of this event, we have a special postmark created that will be available to the public for 60 days. If you want to have your stamped mail piece postmarked with it, just bring it to us and we will gladly put the postmark on it for you.
50 years for a post office in the years that we have gone through in the last 50 years is quite an astonishing feat. If you think about it, about 15 years ago, we were growing at such a huge pace that anyone would have guessed by now we would have grown out of a building the size of this in Pacifica, so close to San Francisco. And being part of the peninsula, we would have continued to go in that direction. The Pacifica Post Office is extremely healthy, as is the San Francisco district. And so, again, thank you for coming, and you can expect 50, maybe more, but a long, long history in the future of the Pacifica Post Office at this location. Without further ado, I'd like to bring up Horace.
The history of the Postal Service here in Pacifica is really, really unique because it started even way back in the late 1800s and 1900s. In the late 1800s, actually the first mail service here was in 1894. We were getting mail from Colma, and if you know where Colma is, that's where all the dead people are. And that's where we were getting the mail from, and it would be over the wagons over here, they bring the mail here. And we had one post office that's located up in Pedro Point at that time called Tobin, T-O-B-I-N. And if you don't know anything about Tobin, do not feel bad because not too many people did. Although he was a very wealthy person. He was actually the founder, and if you've heard of the Hibernia Bank years ago, it's now defunct of course, but he was the founder of that bank, and he had a summer home down here in Pacifica that he came down all the time. Actually, he drove his coach down here to Pacifica and got upset because it was taking too long to get here. It took over an hour and a half to get to Pacifica, but he loved us so much that he came down all the time. And at that time, you could buy property down here for $10. So obviously people were coming down to Pacifica and enjoy the great weather we were having down here. And so a post office built out of that in Pedro Point. If you know where Pedro Point is, it's back going toward the Half Moon Bay side off to the right-hand side just before you get up to going up the Half Moon Bay Tunnel. And there was he set up a station there. And then after that, we had a couple more stations. One was located in the Rockaway Beach, if you know where Rockaway Beach is. Another station was located in the Sharp Park area, at that time called Solana Beach. And over the years, those post offices sort of grew and grew, and the one in the Sharp Park kept moving around all the time. It had about 3 or 4 different areas that it moved into. And the final point that it moved into was at our old planning department on Francisco Boulevard, right adjacent to where City Hall is now. In 1960, they were looking at building a post office. They found this property. And can you imagine, this property back in the 1900s was nothing but sandy wilderness here. Nothing was here. And the way the mail was getting to Pacifica in those early days, starting in 1905, was by the Ocean Shore Railroad. Familiar with the Ocean Shore Railroad? It ran for about maybe 16 years. It went out of business. It has a couple of stations here that the mail came to. Over the last 50 years that the post office has been existing here in Pacifica, we've had 19 postmasters. Ted, you're one of the elite ones. We've had a lot of acting postmasters and officers in charge, of which, as Ted alluded to, yours truly was happened to be one here in 1979, 1980. And I love this post office. I think it's great. There's only 2 people still working here that came when I was here in 1980. So, and they're both carriers. Lita, where's Lita? Is Lita here? Lita, she's one of the originals right there. And our other letter carrier is Jeanette Gray, and she's out on her route delivering your mail to you today. So we're very happy for that. You can't go back, you can just remember. And the memories are so important for everybody, whether it's your wedding anniversary, whether it's the birth of your child, whatever. Anniversaries are really important. And so that's why it's important to remember the Postal Service years down the road. And every post office is going to have an anniversary somewhere. And we're happy that today is the 50th anniversary of the Pacifica Post Office. So thank you guys very much. The post office did a great job on that day. They brought out the community to celebrate the cake, of course, and the gentleman that was one of the speakers, called the district manager, his name is David Stowe. He actually is domiciled in San Francisco, and he's in charge of the entire San Francisco region, which encompasses from San Jose all the way up to the Oregon border on the northwest side of the state. So we were very happy that he was able to come down and join us. And of course, the Pacifica Postmaster was there to honor a couple of his carriers who recently had their 25-year anniversary pin. So 50 years at the Pacific Manor Post Office, as Mr. Stowe alluded to, it'll be around for many, many years, so I trust that you'll be getting your mails from years down the road. It made mention about the first post office in the video called Tobin, and that was actually up on Pedro Point. And I'll show you a picture where approximately where the area is. It's at Dahlman and San Pedro Street. If you're up in Pedro Point, there's a house right there in that area right there in that corner where it was located at that time. And of course, the mail was carried up to Tobin by the Ocean Shore Railroad, and of course that was in 1906 when it was delivering up to that area, as well as a couple other areas in Salado Beach, which we know now is Sharp Park. It changed its name to Sharp Park in 1935 from the Salado Beach area. So it was delivering to those two post offices at that time, and the Salado Beach post office was actually located where the Salado Beach Cafe is, or if you're familiar with the old Anderson grocery store was there, and that's where this is today. This is where the post office was back in 1905 in the Sharp Park area. And of course, the Sharp Park post office moved around 3 or 4 different times over those years where it relocated. And I'm going to ask Andy, who's joining us today, to explain her workings with the post office and how it came about that you joined the Postal Service back in 1948.
Well, it was my very first job. I was a junior in high school, and my friend Rusty Johnson from Pacific Manor and I got jobs for the Christmas break, and we had a ball. Everybody would go to the post office in those days to get their mail because there was no home delivery, as you know. So we got to see everybody in town, or Northern Pacifica anyway, and we worked there for the 2 weeks we were off for Christmas, and then we went back and worked that following summer. And it's interesting because there were rules, I guess, in handling mail, and one of the rules was that a youngster could not touch anything but second, third, or fourth class mail. So we did all the magazines and the newspapers. And however, when it was lunchtime, Mrs. Farrell, who was the postmistress, had to eat her lunch, so she let us sell first class stamps. So we felt very proud of that. A little side story is that my sister, who was 3.5 years younger than me, went to work there the year after I left, and here's what she did. Every day of the week, the mail truck would come in with the newspapers and the magazines twined together, but they were not addressed. The address labels came separately. They were typed, and my sister would take them off, put them on the wet because they weren't stickum, and addressed all of the magazines. One day it would be Red Book, one day it would be Saturday Evening Post, the next day it might be Life, and they came all week long that way, and that's how people got their magazines delivered. In the city, My husband delivered magazines like a paper boy would, but not in Pacifica.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How many people actually worked at the post office at that time?
To my knowledge and my memory, there was just two, Mrs. Farrell and one helper, and I don't remember the gentleman's name.
You know, it's really
He had to unload the trucks as they came in.
it's really something you think about it, because up until that time, the people were coming to their mail to get their mail today, and actually started in 1954. The post office started delivering mail to everybody's house. And if you happen to recall, even at that time, maybe it happened in Pacifica, I wouldn't know. I didn't get here until 1969, but you might even be getting 2 deliveries a day. Do you recall that?
No, we only had one.
Just one day.
Yeah.
I know in Arkansas, where I came from, they had 2 deliveries as a young boy. But in 1954, they began doing the city carrier service to everybody's home, which really was like 91 years after the inauguration of the Postal Service, when Benjamin Franklin was learning how to fly his kite, and he decided that the post office was a good place to build upon. And so up until then, people had to go get their mail at the post office. And Pacifica was incorporated as a city in 1957. And so at that time, I'm going to have Andy show us some pictures of the Sharp Park Post Office. But in 1957, the Sharp Park Post Office became the Pacifica Post Office to conform with the name of the new city that we were undergoing at that time. And I think, Andy, you have some shots here, or pictures that are carrying us up to the...
No, this is where I worked.
And where is that?
This is on Highway 1. That was 2 lanes in those days. And across the street was the Sharp Park School, elementary school, and a Winter's Bar was there. And then we had a shopping center mall, I guess you would call it, that this was in. This young man was born and raised in Pacifica, and in those days, believe me, we took pictures of every boyfriend with his car. He wasn't my boyfriend, but my girlfriend married him. This is Pete Bistoffi. And the shopping center, when it moved across the street, it remodeled into this. Well, there we are. And the post office used to be in this area, but it moved across the street to this new building. I remember registering to vote in this building.
Oh, got upside down? Oh, think about that. There you go. That's the planning department of what we know today. And I went out and took a picture of the planning department where this post office was actually located in 1951. And this is where the planning department is today. So you can see we recycle buildings.
Yes.
We don't do away with
Pacifica always does that.
with the buildings. So at Christmas time, how was the mail? Was it like flooded with cards and letters coming in? Was
And
Santa Claus?
packages too. Oh, that was a lot of mail. That's why she hired us to help. And I wish I could remember what I got paid per hour, but I don't at this time.
No,
And there were no labor laws in those days. And that's why my sister, who was only in the 8th grade, was there sticking labels on magazines.
And you stayed there 2 years.
Yes, I did.
And then you went on to graduate from school.
Bigger and better things.
So from this building here, the post office moved to what is now on Manor Drive in 1963. And that's where the anniversary open house was held on November 1 to celebrate that 50th anniversary of the post office. So you talk about many changes that have occurred over the years, and a lot of changes, not only in Pacifica, but nationwide, the changes have happened. Since 1907, Pacifica, as mentioned in the video, has been served by 19 postmasters, and many acting postmasters or officers in charge. I actually was fortunate to be working here in 1979-80 before I went on to enhance my career, I guess, with the Postal Service in the city. And prior to 1970, when the Postal Service Reorganization Act was established, postmasters were appointed as political appointees. So you would have somebody appointed by maybe at that time President Truman or somebody like that. And so in 1970, the Postal Service sort of restructured itself and developed some new policies and regulations. And that change allowed our postal workers who really wanted to advance, able to advance, and they could go out and sort of bid for a job or be qualified for a job. And that's how our postmasters are appointed today, is by their progression and how they can enhance themselves. And so today in this area, we have a new postmaster just recently came on, and that's the way the postmasters are appointed. So you can see the Postal Service is really a great place to work. I actually retired 6 years ago after 42 years, and as I tell everybody, the mail service is still as good as it ever was, and I'm sure that it's even going to be as good as it was back in the 1950s when Sharp Park first began delivering mail here. So knowing our viewers and getting great service from our postal workers, it's one of those things that I hope that you will enjoy your letter carrier. Going back and looking at the Pacifica Post Office, Andy, and you talk about the people there, how many people do you think our community served at that time?
Well, Jefferson High School that I attended only had about 250 students in it. And Lord, they have thousands now. So I have no idea.
Yeah.
A couple of thousand.
Isn't that something now? And
maybe
now,
10,000 if you count all the outlying farms and things.
And now today we have a populace of 40,000 people,
yeah.
So it's one of those things. I was going to have another picture here I just want to show, is that we talked about the Ocean Shore Railroad and where it went. And this is actually the Salada Beach area, and this would be, if you're looking at the Anderson store or the Salada Beach Cafe, this is where the railroad station was actually located. So at that time there were 3 or 4 Ocean Shore stations in Pacifica, and that started, as I mentioned, that it'd go up the coast up to Half Moon Bay, and once the train stopped, we'd have to get our mail, and the people would have to go to their post office and pick it up, and you can see over the 50 years how great service it's been since that time. So as we get down to the wrapping up our show, I want to thank Andy for joining us and sharing her experience of working at the post office. And of course, we want to thank the Pacifica Historical Society for having this wonderful way of preserving history. And Andy, you mentioned to me a while ago about talking about history.
Well, it's interesting, Horace. I was thinking earlier today, I'm going to be on a Historic Society show. And here I am, as a youngster working in a post office, never thinking that I was making history, but I was. And now I am history, so to speak. And everybody needs to realize that everything we do today is history for tomorrow.
How's that saying go? Yesterday was history, and tomorrow is a mystery, and today we're just in a moment. So that's sort of the way it is. But it's one of those things. I would encourage people, if they get a chance to, if they go into the Pacific Post Office or they see their letter carrier on the street, just tell them, hey, thank you for the service that you do. Well, let me ask you another question. Just happened to think about it. Did you have to worry about dogs back in 1948, 49?
No.
Yeah, see, isn't that interesting? Our
No.
letter carriers today, we have dogs
true.
that they sort of have to worry about, and that's one of those unfortunate things. But that's the way life has gone over the last several years. So anyway, if you want to get involved with the work of the Pacifica Historical Society and our many projects, our email is www.pacificahistory.org, or you can phone 650-359-5462. And I want to thank everybody for helping and watching our show tonight, and thank the post office for having an open house and anniversary to commemorate the 50th year of its existence. So thank you very much.